Hello and welcome to St. Paul's Church. I'm Father Tom Holtzen, and this is my reflection for Lent 5, 2020, taken from Psalm 131. Out of the depths I have called to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears consider well the voice of my supplication. That verse from Psalm 130 expresses so well our hearts at this time. We've been crying to God in our prayers, and we have been praying for the safety and health of those we know and love. Our desire is that God hears our prayers and answers them quickly, bringing an end to the coronavirus pandemic. Every day we hear more and more how the virus is spreading, and so we do what Christians do. We cry to God out of the depths. That cry itself is an act of faith. We cry out to God because He listens to our prayers. We cry out to God because He is merciful to us. As Psalm 130 says, "If you, O Lord, were to note what is done amiss, O Lord, who could stand? Which one of us could stand as perfect and holy and righteous before God? Certainly not me." And so we cry out to God because He is merciful. As the psalmist says, "For there is forgiveness with you, therefore you shall be feared." God is to be feared precisely because He loves us. And He loves us by bringing life out of sin and death. God brings life out of sin and death, healing out of sickness, joy out of tragedy. He makes dry bones live again by breathing His life-giving Spirit into them. God has breathed His life-giving Spirit into our soul at our baptism. Then bone connected to bone and flesh connected to flesh, until we were bone of His bone and flesh of His flesh, united with Christ in that mystical union which is the Church. It should not surprise us that Jesus raised Lazarus from the grave. Jesus has the power over life and death. He is full of God's life-giving Spirit, whom He breathed upon Lazarus when He told him, "Come out." Then, through the work of the Spirit, Lazarus was unbound from sin and death and lived again. That miracle of Jesus is the miracle of resurrection, and it is the miracle in which the Christian lives. We are raised to new life, as St. Paul tells us in Romans 8:2, because the law of the Spirit of life in Jesus Christ has set us free from the law of sin and death. God does not leave us in the tomb of sin and death. Rather, He breathes upon us the Spirit of life, that we too may be unbound from sin and death. As St. Paul said, "But you are not in the flesh, you are in the Spirit, since the Spirit of God dwells in you. But if Christ is in you, though the body is dead because of sin, the Spirit is life because of righteousness." If the Spirit of Him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, He who raised Christ from the dead will give life to your mortal bodies also, through His Spirit that dwells in you. The Spirit gives new life through resurrection of righteousness. And in this way, the gift of the Spirit brings into order our unruly wills and affections, as our collect for this week states. It makes us holy unto God by becoming holy gods. Our collect prays that among the swift and varied changes of the world, our hearts may surely there be fixed where true joys are to be found. My prayer for each of you at this challenging time is that your heart may be fixed on the one who calls forth the dead to new life. In Jesus Christ there is plenteous redemption. Let us then wait upon the Lord for our salvation. As the psalmist has said, "I wait for the Lord, my soul waits for Him. In His word is my hope." Indeed, that word calls each of us from death to life, saying, "Come out." Thanks for tuning in.